Hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Thank you so much for streaming with us on this Monday. President Biden in Japan on his high-stakes tour of Asia. His comments about support for Taiwan and the sharp response coming from China. Also ahead, the massive shipment of baby formula arriving in the U.S. from overseas as Operation Fly Formula seeks to ease the dire shortage across our country. And Russian forces escalating their attacks in eastern Ukraine, the latest on the fighting as the U.S. steps up assistance for Ukraine's military. A third state now investigating a potential case of monkeypox as concerns grow that the virus could be spreading here in the U.S. But first, the latest on President Biden's Asia tour. At a press conference in Tokyo today, he appeared to signal a big shift, saying that the U.S. military would respond if China invaded Taiwan. Well, the White House quickly tried to clean this up, insisting it's not changing longstanding policy, that the U.S. would simply assist Taiwan in defending itself. China is already responding, telling the U.S. not to underestimate its resolve and defend what they believe is their territory. Let's bring in ABC's Britt Clinton. She's traveling with the president in Tokyo, along with our political reporter, Brittany Shepard, for more. Brittany, if this was intentional on Biden's part, what's the strategy there? And what kind of strain does this just add to the tensions that already exist?
Well, Kira, this creates fresh backdrop for escalating tensions between the United States and China. It's a tale as old as time, but one that seems especially fresh with escalating tensions in the Indo-Pacific region, especially with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Intentional or not, this is a huge escalation of domestic policy here. And I think an attempt from the White House to reassert their space on the global platform. I mean, under President Trump, it was America first means America alone. And slowly but surely, the Biden White House has really attempted to renege on that reputation that Trump set with several foreign leaders left a sour taste in their mouth. And I think it's like a light broadcast to Vladimir Putin as well, that Biden is willing to go up to, if not farther than the promise that he made to the Ukrainians to tell the Chinese that if they cross a line, the United States will not back down.
So, Brett, let's talk about how Taiwan is responding now to these remarks from President Biden.
Well, with gratitude, and, the Taiwanese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that Taiwan expresses sincere welcome and thanks to the president for reiterating its rock-solid commitment to Taiwan. This is something it's said time and time again every time there is some kind of positive voices of support from the U.S. or any other Western nation. Now, Taiwan said our government's determination, it added, to firmly defend Taiwan's freedom, democracy and security has never changed, and we will continue to improve self-defense capabilities. So these kind of comments, as I say, we've heard from Taiwan before, but as Brittany said, the biggest comments and the most vocal anger coming from China as well.
So, Brittany, President Biden is set to meet with the other two members of the Quad, India and Australia. What can we expect from those talks as we follow this trip?
I think we're going to see some more readout of this economic plan that President Biden is unveiling in Asia. That's going to be a little bit less broad, a little bit less bombastic than the TPP put under Obama and the America First policy put under Trump. I think there's lots of strain economically on supply chain. We're seeing the crunch here, of course, domestically at home. And Biden is trying to maybe retool collaboration in the Indo-Pacific region, I think with climate, infrastructure, emerging technologies. And I think critically, we're also going to see discussions of food security. Now, there is a ban on wheat exports in India, and that's important because Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world, one of the main shippers of wheat to Africa, Europe, and North America, which has put a crunch not only on domestic prices, but, of course, on developing nations. And Biden, I think, will be pushing Prime Minister Modi of India on why he set that wheat ban and if there's any flexibility or wiggle room there.
All right, Britt Clinton, Brittany Shepard, thank you ladies both so much. And I want to bring in Neil Thomas now. He's a China and Northeast Asia analyst at the Eurasia Group. So what did you make of Biden's comments saying that the U.S. would defend Taiwan militarily? That's what he emphasized if China invaded.
Thanks, Kira. Yeah, Biden's comments certainly raised the temperature in cross-strait relations. It's uncertain still exactly how much of a change in policy this is. Biden's obviously far in front of his advisors who are trying to walk back these comments and say that the policy hasn't changed. And Biden himself also said, he prefaced those remarks by saying that the policy hadn't changed, and that was a readout with Japan. But this is now the third time since last August that Biden has committed in interviews to defend Taiwan. So the policy of strategic ambiguity, where previously the United States did not say whether it would or would not intervene to defend Taiwan against attack, is increasingly under strain. But we haven't seen that official policy change just yet. And if it did, that would get an even stronger reaction from China than we're seeing now.
So then, Neil, do you think China will be a main focus when Biden meets with leaders of the other Quad nations tomorrow? And how do you think these comments sort of set the tone for that meeting?
I think the key watch point for the Quad meeting is whether Biden makes this type of remark again. I mean, that would be a really important sign that we're actually seeing a high-level shift in thinking about this idea of strategic ambiguity towards Taiwan. And that would potentially signal a much more serious shift in the formal American policy, the one China policy towards Taiwan, which would be very much something that raises the temperature in cross-strait relations. The Quad meeting itself is focused on China, and that's one of the main reasons why this grouping has gained so much traction in recent years. I mean, despite statements that it's not aimed at any other countries, it's clearly China's rising profile and assertiveness in the region that's brought these four countries into closer cooperation. So we know that we're going to see an initiative to combat illegal fishing in the Indo-Pacific, which is very much squarely aimed at China, which is thought to be responsible for over 90% of illegal fishing in the region. So it's likely we'll also see more statements, potentially more announcements aimed to that effect. But it's unlikely that India especially will want to go quite as far as the United States and perhaps even Japan in terms of what it says about Taiwan.
It'll be interesting to watch and follow. China and Northeast Asia analyst at the Eurasia Group, Neil Thomas. Neil, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
President Biden signing a new $40 billion aid package for Ukraine as well while he was on this trip to Asia as Russian forces escalate their attacks in the Donbass, a critical eastern region of that country. Ukrainian officials posted this video showing the aftermath of a school leveled by Russian forces. And then Ukraine, they struck back, posting this of a Russian self-propelled mortar destroyed that they say was a part of a critical bridge in the region. Foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burr is joining me now live from Kyiv with more. So President Zelensky is calling for more sanctions on Russia now as this conflict continues. What could be the next steps that we see, Tom?
Well, Kira, I think Zelensky's pitch to the global business elite in the Swiss resort of Davos, which gathers every year, was effectively, yes, you've made considerable sanctions against Russian businesses, Russian individuals, Russian banks, but Zelensky wants more, and probably what he wants is those sanctions to be tightened up. I think what people need to understand is that sanctions are imperfect, right? Let's take Russian banks. Many Russian banks are now not able to participate in the international financial system as they were before the invasion of Ukraine, but certain Russian banks still are because European nations still depend on Russian gas, and they need to make payments for that gas, and therefore those banks, those Russian banks, are not subject to those restrictions. I think oil and gas is at the heart of this, and Zelensky said in his pitch at Davos to say, really, European nations need to do more, but it's not straightforward. A nation like Germany depends on Russian gas incredibly at the moment, and it's going to take some time before nations can wean themselves off it.
And Tom, Zelensky also coming out saying between 50 to 100 Ukrainian soldiers are dying every day now in this conflict. How's that impacting troop levels and just the ability to fight off the Russians at this point?
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly eye-opening statistic. I mean, you can see the burnt-out Russian tank behind me, which is on display. The Russians have taken serious losses in this invasion. Ukraine has not openly admitted how many soldiers it's losing, but yesterday Zelensky saying 50 to 100 soldiers a day. Before the war, it's estimated that Russia had about 300,000 active personnel. That sounds like a huge amount, but the number of personnel actually active on the front lines right now is way below that. Soldiers have to rotate, they have to be trained, they have to have time off, and therefore it's not sustainable for the Ukrainian military to lose 50 to 100 soldiers a day. Zelensky clearly saying to his allies, this is serious, we need more help.
Tom, you know, while I have you, I didn't even realize that that was the reason for that tank behind you. Do you find that a lot of the locals are coming to look at this? I mean, is this working? Is this image working to just sort of uplift the Ukrainian people that indeed Zelensky's in charge, the troops are in charge, and they are going to win this war? Tell us more about just what's happening behind you.
Yeah, Kira, it's an incredible scene here. You can see loads of people coming in. They're taking selfies. We've even had children climbing on top of the tanks this morning. It's a bit of a solemn atmosphere here. No Ukrainian wanted this in the centre of their capital city. Russia invaded this land. But I think the Ukrainian authorities want it to be a reminder to the local population, a reminder to the world via us about what Russia has done here and the losses that Russia has sustained.
Tom Sufi-Burridge, appreciate it. Thank you so much. Coming up, voters set to head to the polls for primaries in Alabama, Arkansas, and Georgia. We're going to talk to the Alabama Secretary of State when we come back. Welcome back. Voters are set to head to the polls for primary elections in Alabama, Arkansas, and Georgia tomorrow, as well as several runoffs in Texas and a special election in Minnesota. Several races involve Republican candidates running for offices that would oversee or help certify future elections who continue to advance discredited accusations that the 2020 election was stolen. Now, to be clear, those results were certified by all 50 states led by Republicans and Democrats. Accusations of fraud were examined by 60 courts of law, including Republican and Democratic judges, 18 of them appointed by President Trump. They were also investigated by the Attorney General at that time, Bill Barr, who was appointed by President Trump. And again, no widespread fraud was ever found. But Trump is once again promoting baseless claims of voter fraud, this time in a race between Republicans. That key Pennsylvania Senate primary between Dr. Mehmet Oz and David McCormick, which is still undecided at this moment. Alabama's Republican Secretary of State, John Merrill, joining me now live for more. John, good to see you. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey there, hoping to avoid a runoff in the Republican primary. How concerned are you that candidates or former presidents could call foul in a close race now?
Well, look, this discussion's been ongoing for a year and a half now. And when people have asked me, was the election stolen? My repeated response with confidence is not in Alabama. And of course, we have been recognized as the gold standard for election administration in the United States by more than 3 national entities. So we're very proud of that, and we're excited, and we're ready to go tomorrow.
So, John, what's your message then to voters there in Alabama? You say you're ready to go, but there could be some concern about voter fraud. So how direct and transparent are you being about this?
Well, of course, and the thing that needs to be remembered in Alabama is that anyone that casts their ballot for the candidate of their choice will have their voice heard for the candidate of their choice. And in Alabama, we continue to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
There you go. There's your mantra right there. I can see it. Alabamians, finally, they are set to vote for your replacement as Secretary of State. What advice are you giving to whomever it is that wins that race when it comes to dealing with accusations of fraud?
Well, the main thing is you have to listen to the people, but you also have to make sure that people understand you're going to follow established state and federal laws in order to ensure that everyone's voice is heard and everyone's vote is counted, because we want everyone to vote, but just one time.
All right. John Merrill, Alabama Secretary of State, thanks for your time.
It's always good to see you.
All right, coming up, Trevor Reed, the American freed from Russian custody, speaking out what he says he went through and what was going through his mind during that dramatic prisoner swap. And welcome back to ABC News Live. Nearly 80,000 pounds of baby formula arriving here in the U.S. amid the critical nationwide shortage. A U.S. military aircraft from Germany landed in Indianapolis with 35 tons of hyperallergenic formula on board. The Department of Agriculture says that additional flights will be announced in the coming days. Florida is the third state to detect a potential case of monkeypox now as cases spread throughout the world. President Biden saying he doesn't foresee the country enacting the same 21-day quarantine, though. There are reportedly more than 190 confirmed cases and suspected cases of the rare virus in at least 16 countries now. Certain batches of Jif peanut butter recalled due to a possible salmonella outbreak after 14 people in 12 states have gotten sick. The products in question have the lot numbers you see there on your screen. Smucker announced the voluntary recall, and they apologize for the concern that this will cause. Now to that investigation into the Southern Baptist Convention. According to an investigative report commissioned by the church, top leaders mishandled sexual abuse allegations for years. Will Reeve has more for us now. Hi, Will.
Kira, the Southern Baptist Convention has 13 million members, and this just-released report will have a major impact on the church. Leaders from the nation's largest Protestant denomination have released a large-scale third-party investigation that finds a culture that permeated the group in which top clergy ignored, minimized, and even vilified sex abuse survivors. The nearly 300-page report also reveals church leaders resisted efforts for abuse prevention and reform for decades. And it goes on to show evidence that suggests leaders lied to members of the church regarding keeping a potential database of offenders to prevent abuse, all the while keeping their own secret list. The SBC, like other major religious institutions in the U.S., has struggled with declining membership over the last decade and a half. Church leaders have bristled at comparisons, though, to the abuse crisis in the Catholic Church, claiming that the total number of abuse cases is smaller within the Southern Baptist Convention. Kira.
All right, we'll follow it. Will Reeve, thanks so much. And Trevor Reed, the ex-Marine who spent nearly 3 years in a Russian prison, is now speaking out. He was released in exchange, as you know, for that Russian serving time here in the U.S. Reed and his parents sat down for that interview with our Patrick Reevell.
It's amazing to see you here.
After 985 days imprisoned by Russia, Trevor Reed is finally free.
I remember thinking, like, is this real? You know, you're thinking maybe this is not happening. Maybe I'm still going to wake up right now in solitary confinement.
Earlier this month, the 30-year-old former Marine freed in a dramatic prisoner exchange between Russia and the U.S., traded for a Russian convicted in the U.S. on drug smuggling charges a decade ago. The trade taking place on a runway, recalling a Cold War spy swap.
I remember looking at him, and he, looked over at me, and I think both of us probably had that same feeling, that same thought of, like, that's what that guy looks like.
Reed was a presidential Marine who once guarded President Obama, but his nightmare began in summer 2019 while visiting his girlfriend in Moscow. After a drunken party, Reed fell into the hands of Russian police, who charged him with attacking an officer. In reality, he and U.S. officials say the case was fabricated by Russia's security services to take Reed as a bargaining chip.
I asked, one of those officers, I said, why are you guys doing this? Why did you write this, false, accusation against me? And he looked around at the door to make sure that there was no one there. And he looked at the other police officer, and he said, we didn't want to write this. They told us to write this.
Sentenced to 9 years prison, Reed was sent to a forced labor camp. Subjected to harsh treatment, placed repeatedly in solitary confinement, he went on multiple hunger strikes, refusing to work for his captors.
I decided right away that I was never going to be part of that process. They were not going to make 1 ruble off of me. And whatever punishment I received for that, it was worth it to me. I didn't care.
But Reed's family never giving up. His father, Joey, spending over a year alone in Russia, repeatedly demonstrating outside the White House.
Do you remember the first thing you said to Trevor?
I said, I love you. I'm so glad you're home. Gave him a kiss and a hug. A long, long hug.
Reed first undergoing intensive counseling on a military base in Texas, but last week discharged.
Now he's got us all day long again, so which we're loving. I'm sure
he may need a break
Yeah,
soon.
he's like, oh my God, put me back in prison. I don't know.
But Reed himself can't stop thinking about another ex-Marine left behind in Russia. Paul Whelan, held hostage there for 3.5 years on trumped-up espionage charges.
You know, I thought when I found out that it was an exchange that was happening, that they had probably exchanged Paul Whelan as well.
What did you think when you heard that Paul wasn't coming home?
Sorry. I thought that that was wrong, that they got me out and not Paul. And sorry. I knew that that as soon as I was able to, that I would fight for him to get out, and that I would do everything I could to get him out of there. The United States got me out, but they left him there. I can't describe to you how painful that feeling is.
Reed now determined to help get Whelan out. And Brittany Griner, the WNBA star held in Moscow since February on drug charges and who the State Department considers wrongfully detained. Russia has floated the notorious arms dealer Victor Bout as a possible trade for Whelan or Griner, or both. Reed in no doubt whether that should happen.
Absolutely, yeah. Victor Bout has already been in prison for 15 years. If that's for Victor Bout, I don't care. I don't care if it's 100 Victor Bouts. They have to get our guys out.
Kira, it was incredible to see Trevor here free after covering his case for so long in Russia. It was actually the first time that we've talked to each other where we haven't been speaking through the bars of a cage. But Trevor is clearly tormented by the fate of Paul Whelan. He's determined to lobby the Biden administration that Whelan and other hostages not be forgotten. And he's also concerned about Brittany Griner. He believes if a trade can get her and Whelan home, the US should do it.
Patrick, thank you so much. And for more, you can watch 985 Days, the Trevor Reed interview, right here on ABC News Live tonight, 8:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific. It's also streaming on Hulu. I'm Kira Phillips. ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis. Stay with us.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.